A very good morning to each and everyone present here. I am Himashri Bhagavati, Assistant Professor of Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning, welcoming you all to today's webinar session of GCAP Insight 1.4 on Dynamic Journey of the Aging Indian, a Missing Link in the Built Environment. The lecture will be delivered by architect Neha Panchal and architect Yagnik Bathija. First and foremost, I would like to welcome architect Avanidas sir, Managing Trustee of GCAP, CEO architect Sahil Avanidas sir, CEO of Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning, Dr. Nirmala Devi ma'am, Principal of Dona International Institute of Assam. And I'd also like to today welcome our honorable guest, architect Neha Panchal and architect Yagnik Bathija, Associate Professor of Rachana Sansad Academy of Architecture, Mumbai. It is our privilege to have them both in our webinar today. Now, before proceeding to our webinar session, I would like to give a brief introduction of our renowned college with a short video.
Welcome to Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning. Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning GCAP is the first premier college in East India. The Trust Dona Foundation. Dona Foundation Trust was established on 13 September 2005 by architect and managing director Sri Abani Das, trustee and educationist Srimati Daksha Das. Northeast states had no degree course for architecture and students had to travel far and wide for becoming architect and designer. Dona Foundation took it upon themselves to start a college of architecture to fulfill the dreams of these students. Sri Horbesar Das Knowledge Campus promoted by Dona Foundation. Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning is approved by Council of Architecture COA New Delhi, Higher Technical Education Government of Assam and Indian Institute of Town Planning ITPI New Delhi. The college follows UGC guidelines and is affiliated to Asto University. The college was inaugurated by late Torun Gogoi, former Honorable Chief Minister of Assam, on 26 January 2006. BCAP offers Bachelor of Architecture (BR) 5-year degree course, Bachelor of Science in Interior Design (BSc) 3-year degree course, Master of Urban and Regional Planning (MPlan) 2-year degree course. The college has evolved over the years and all batches of students have passed out with a 100% placement track record. The role of an architect is constantly being modified and redefined with the changing scenario in the profession. Apart from having one's own practice, there are various master degree courses such as urban and regional planning, heritage conservation, building management, housing, interior design, landscape design, etc. And after master degree, student may go for higher education like PhD postdoctorate. Architecture, also known as the mother of all arts, not only reflects the society that builds, but it also affects the way that society develops. This means we need architects, planners, and designers who can respond to the different needs and values of all sections of the community. And according to the reports of UNESCO published in Times of India, our country needs 3 lakhs of town planners by 2031. The courses are very unique and is a fusion of design, art and technology, demanding a lot of presentation, physical model making, which instills self-confidence, orientation, leadership, team building, time management. So it prepares an individual as a whole to face all challenges and develops problem solving skills. Career opportunities are limitless. To mention a few, one can become an entrepreneur, freelancer, jobs in architecture town planning firms, jobs in government departments, jobs in teaching and research and development. Our new campus is surrounded by lush greenery amidst beautiful sceneries, creating peaceful atmosphere for students' growth and development. The campus has been named as the Sorbeswar Das Knowledge Campus, inaugurated by Sri Harbananda Honwal, former Chief Minister of Assam and Honorable Minister of Sports, Shipping and Waterways of India. Few visuals of the campus. The main block. The interior spaces. Reception, front desk, studio, lecture hall, faculty room, conference room, multipurpose hall, computer lab, material lab. It consists of small-scale models of sanitary fittings and fixtures and other materials used in building construction. Library. College has a well-equipped library consisting of a wide array of reference books, textbooks, journals, CDs relevant to architecture, urban design, interior design, urban and regional planning, and other fields. Eminent personalities are invited from all over India as visiting faculty and guest lecturers from time to time, like architect V.V. Doshi, architect Nilkan Chaya, architect Sonke Hoff, Shri Pradut Bordoloi, Shri Dhananjay Dek, structural engineer, new age architectural engineer, architect Dheeraj Chilhotra, Principal Thakur College of Architecture, guest lectures by architect Rana Mahanta, project director at Creative House Contracting, Dubai. Apart from regular academic courses, we have Sports Week, Annual Fest, Exurbia, Jonasa and study trips to architectural places of interest in India and abroad. First Indo-Malaysian Green Building Workshop on 2016. Workshop by architect Vivek Kapat, workshop on Deepor Bill Geodesign, Annual Fest Exurbia. At GCAP, we strive to provide constant support and foster a positive spirit for holistic development of an individual. Now showing some visuals of students' classworks. GCAP believe that every student has the potential to achieve excellence in any field they choose. Other than academic, there are some visuals. Celebrating World Environment Day, College Main Gate designed by students. Students participating in Brahmaputra Beach Carnival Fest 2020. National Service Scheme activities. Homemade marks making by students. These are the magazines published by our college as GCAP Voice. At Dona Foundation, we strive to give birth to innovation and creativity for holistic development of an individual. The journey of GCAP continues because it's always about the journey and never about the destination. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce our today's honorable guest speakers, architect Neha Panchal and architect Yagnik Bathija. Architect Neha Panchal and architect Yagnik Bathija graduated as architects from Kamlar Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture, Mumbai in 2006 and obtained a master's degree with major in History, Theory and Criticism at Center for Environmental Planning and Technology, Ahmedabad in 2017. They practice in Mumbai and are associate professor at the Rachana Sansad Academy of Architecture, Mumbai. Architect Yagnik Bathija is co-founder of Big Tree Architects, a collaborative design practice, and he coordinates the undergraduate thesis program at AOA. He is interested in exploring critical pedagogies and architectural education and has won a national award for the best postgraduate thesis for the same. Architect Neha Panchal coordinates the undergraduate foundation program and heads the research cell at AOA. With Mumbai as their laboratory, they ensure that their research projects and studios are critically informed by ecosystem of the city. The duo is currently researching on existing culture of play in Mumbai and work on developing tactical urban insert in collaboration with the Mumbai Corporation of Greater Mumbai. So now I would like to request architect Neha Panchal and architect Yagnik Bathija to deliver the speech on today's topic. Please.
Thank you, Guwahati College of Architecture and M.Arch and Professor Avanidas for inviting us. And so we are going to be presenting on a topic today, which is the missing link in the built environment of the aging, of the dynamic aging Indian. So without wasting much time, we'll start with our presentation. This presentation is going to be, parts of the presentation are going to be interactive. So any kind of feedback would help. And yes, there is going to be a lot of, it's going to be fun. It's going to be light. The presentation is not very heavy. It's not made specifically for architects. It's actually a presentation for almost every class of society. So without wasting much time, I'm going to start. This first slide, which we come across is the most famous resistance that we ever feel when we say, and this movie that done by A.B. Cobb and Amitabh Bachchan, which says "Buddha hoga tera baap." Age is something that we've always been dealing with, and it's inevitable. We all age. And the problem is when we make someone realize that you're aging and the resistance that comes in. And this movie kind of a few years back came up, and that exactly said that, a lot of times we've heard this, that, "Arey Buddha kisko bola?" Like, it happened to me last time when I was just walking on the street and we came across this bunch of kids who were playing cricket, and they kind of hit the ball to me and they asked me, "Uncle, ball fekna." So I am like, "Arey uncle kisko bola?" So that resistance is something that's always been there. So yeah, this is something that we start with. So we'll move on. And now this is a small exercise that we would like to do with the audience here. There are certain activities that we've associated with certain age groups, right? So we've got A, which are children, we've got B, which are mid-age adults, and we've got C, which are senior citizens. Can anyone quickly type in the chat box or tell us over the meeting that, what exactly do you associate? Like A1 with A2, or B with 2 and 3, or C with 4 and 1. What would be the most obvious way of going about making associations? Could anyone give me a feedback on that?
A with 4.
Okay, A with 4, yes.
C1.
C1, yes. B?
B3, 2 and 3.
Okay. Thank you, Architect Talukdar. And this exactly has been the scenario with our society, where we've started putting certain user groups in silos. Like we've started typecasting them. Like, it has to be A with 4 because children and playing in a park. It has to be mid-age adults with standing on a bus stop or at a tapri because, probably they're going to work. And C because they're senior citizens. So their journey has to be either religious or to a bank, or probably to a park or an old age home, right? These are silos that we've created in over the years in our society. So now moving ahead with this, let's move to the next slide. What do you think this woman is doing? Anyone? Like y'all can get back to us. It's okay. Y'all can unmute. Y'all can put it in the chat box. Either ways. Anyone? Guys, this has to be interactive, because the more interactive it is, the more energy kind of reciprocates. What do you think? What do you think this woman might be doing? I know it looks like a very, very funny image where this woman's in midair, probably doing a stunt. Anyone that can complete this image? All right, we'll move ahead. This is exactly what we did in the last slide. In the last slide, where we put all the senior citizens with the temple, we put the mid-age crowd with the tapri and the bus stop, we put the children with the park. This kind of defies everything. So now going to the next image, what do you think this gentleman is doing? Hold on. A, B, C with 4. Okay. That's great. This is exactly what it is. So, when you go behind and you're like, so this is where I think already there is a change in the society where standard notions are being challenged, standard practices are being challenged, standard typecasting and silos are being challenged. So now we'll move ahead with a certain more examples like these. Now, the reason why these are certain images for a research that we had undertaken when we were in Ahmedabad, we were in SEP, and these are images taken, and this is exactly when we come across, because see, we all are going to age, okay? We all age. We are aging every day. We are aging every minute. But we are typecasting, and our built environments are kind of not addressing these issues. Yes, there are policies, there are frameworks made. There is a lot of, soft corner and empathy for the senior citizens. But see these images, okay? See the first one, the biker lady. in a traditional Indian attire with shades on, probably because of a cataract surgery, or probably just trying to protect her eyes, on a scooter. See the second one, a really senior woman trying to negotiate an oddly parked car where she's almost on the main driving carriageway. Okay. And the third one where we've got a gentleman carrying bags, but see the footpath besides it. Okay. Now this is where the concern comes in. This is where the concern comes in, where how do they negotiate? Where do they negotiate? You know, is anything being done about this? Right. Chal, we'll move ahead. Yeah. So this brings us to this entire study of dynamic journeys of the aging Indian. And the reason why we say dynamic journeys, very interestingly, the last part of the presentation of the pedagogy of the GCAP college, right, was that, you know, it is about the journey and it is not about the end product. So that is exactly where we came in from. And that's why we call these dynamic journeys, because, you know, we've constantly been typecasting the senior citizens, or for that, any kind of user group, that, you know, all our urban planning policies, all our urban studies, all our researches, all our designs are aimed at nodes, home, temple, you know, parks. But what happens to the journey in between? You know, that is where these guys are negotiating, the senior citizens are negotiating the built environment every day. And there are multiple these kinds. Going ahead in the presentation, we will tell you how these have been negotiated. So our concerns are very simple. Our cities are designed for productive, fast-moving, able bodies, as the built environment is the focus. Okay, it's focused around mobility, production, and efficiency. Every city is focused on the age group of 22 to 55. Because they are the one earning money, they are the one, you know, adding to the GDP, they are the one adding to the production, to the consumerism of a society. Okay, they are the one buying, consuming, and constantly growing. Okay, the elderly age group were relatively slower. We are not calling them, like, you know, not abled. We are calling them relatively slower, because trust me, if you go out there, you will realize there are still a lot of senior citizens who are way more active than us. The online generation, or the iPad generation, or the Insta generation. Okay, they are way more active. For them, catching a bus, for them getting into a train is way more easier than any one of us. But they are relatively slower because that's biology. You can't do much about it. And have limited productivity, are expected to fit in the setup. So whenever there is an urban insert or an urban planning policy or a new kind of settlement done, until it is specially designed for the senior citizens, which generally is in the outskirts of the city, you know, that is where the problem is. The setup is done for the able-bodied, and ab senior citizen ho, to you ghar pe baith jao, ya ab park jao, or you go to the temple. But no, that's not the case, because everyone likes to age in place. Everyone likes to do an everyday journey. So mobility is a primary purpose of understanding journeys. The urban space is not just for mechanical transiting, but also about negotiating meaningfully. You know, it's not just about point A to point B jana. I just have to go from point A to B, B to C, and come back to A. It's about the journey that we negotiate on a daily basis. Like, you know, for example, there's this concept in the marketing arena, which is called run shopping and fun shopping. Okay, when you get out of the station and you're run shopping, you pick up your veggies, you pick up whatever you have to, and you go home. Or the fun shopping, when you go to a mall. Those are negotiations. Urban experiences of the elderly are restricted to specific designated area. This is a speedo based on stereotypes, which we kind of understood in the second slide. How many of these journeys get realized? They want to make the journeys, but how many of them get realized? Now we'll go ahead and we'll say how we've gone about it, okay? Because it's easier to talk, it's easier to raise these concerns, because the society, architects, sociologists, they only raise concerns. But I think what we need to start doing is devise methodologies of how do you answer these concerns? How do you go about these? So we'll move ahead. Yeah. So the tribute is simple. Cities need to reverse the focus from production to human purpose. Because enough of consumerism and production. Okay, let's become human centric. And that is where the entire field of design is moving through, right? It's UI, UX, it's human centric. Streets get richer with urban experiences of the elderly. Yangel, life between buildings. When we read such activities, you know, a bunch of senior citizens collecting at a street corner or outside a small, like a post office or a bank. So that is what adds, okay? Because these are the guys who have time. Look at, they're retired. They probably have time over the day. We are constantly trying to run to get to work, come back. The symbiotic relationship of the elderly with the street vendors, the corner store, the chai nasta stall are essential factors for adding value to these urban experiences. We've all gone through it. When we've got a grandmother, grandfather, or any senior citizen in my building, and they're like, I need to go down to get some chai from the tapri. We're like, nahi, aap baitho, hum leke aate. We will get it for you. Why? because we are scared that, what if they get out and on one of those footpaths with the paver block being up and down, they might slip and injure a hip. But no, that is trying to create a problem and then addressing it. Here, what we are trying to say is let's start making this a part, because trust me, the current generation of senior citizens is not really slow. Okay, this study is a testimonial to the relationships of the elderly with the built environment. Let's move ahead. They need to look beyond just the functional aspect of the urban built environment. Think about their relationships to the entire environment, the ability to lay claim to urban spaces. Now, by lay claim, I personally feel on a lighter side, these are the users who paid tax for over 40 years. These are the users who've owned the area they've lived over 40 years. And when they come to a certain age, we're like, why don't we move to the outskirts of a city in a nice farmhouse where the air is fresh? Bullshit, they don't want to. They have aged in place. They've been here. They've been maximum taxpayers. They are the ones who got the largest FDs on a lighter note. But that is exactly what I'm trying to say. So they lay claim to urban space on their own terms and actively engage in the production and reproduction of cities. They cannot be not counted in this. Recognizing these relationships with the built environment may give direction for the future intervention to sustain and become more meaningful. The mega narratives of the city, which urban planning, urban design, can be informed by these micro narratives. Now, they are a small part, okay? They are a small fraction of the society. So they become micro narratives, but they do inform the mega narratives. Now, the premise, okay? Urbanization and aging population are two major influencing trends of the world in the 21st century. This is a demographic in 1960, where the population curve kind of tapered. In 2010, where there was a bulge and then it tapered. In 2060, with the innovation in medical and tech, okay, the age, the average age of an Indian male or a female has increased. There was a time when 60 was an average. Today 70 is like, arey, abhi sirf 70 hai. I'm going to go for 5-10 more years easily. So there's an entire bulge, and it's very evident from a report from the UN. So the research aimed to explore the active engagement of the aging Indian with their immediate built environment. The process now, what was this active engagement about? It was the process of mapping daily journeys in the neighborhood. Okay, now we talk about these larger policies, larger, design interventions, town planning schemes. Let's talk about something at an everyday basis, because architecture is something that we consume on a day-to-day basis. It's the everyday production of built environment is that we consume. Okay, so the process of mapping daily journeys in the neighborhood, obviously because of the time constraint and because of certain limitations, we started with the neighborhood, but I think ideally that is where we start from. The study also attempts to identify multiplicity with older adults and its influences on the journeys. Let's go ahead. Yeah. Neha, would you want to take over? Yeah.
So, okay. So now let's try and understand. The study is focusing on what part of a city. So what we realized was that the elderly, once they've retired, their influence of movement is much lesser. The radius of movement is much lesser. So on a daily basis, when they are moving about to say buy grocery or to meet some people or for exercise, etc., they don't go beyond a radius of about 1 kilometer, and that's their movement of radius on a daily basis. Often once or twice in a month, they need to go beyond sometimes for certain kind of healthcare related or banking related, or maybe even meeting family. So the influence that they have and the maximum engagement with the built environment that they have is specifically with respect to their neighborhood. So we thought that the study should focus on the neighborhood itself. So therefore, the study that we conducted was within a neighborhood, and that became our context. So we conducted the study in Ahmedabad, and in Ahmedabad, we're looking at this particular neighborhood of Azad Society, which is relatively well located. It's near Vastrapur. This is where you have the IIM, and then you have a very interesting cross section of residences. It is across the financial, the economic background as well. So we have people who are living in informal settlements as well as people who are living in large bungalows and apartment blocks. So you have like an interesting cross section of people here. So this is the place where we effectively conducted the study. Now this is the spine that's cutting through the site. Here you have, this road is relatively important because it has a lot of shops, it has a lot of other amenities, and it has parks and temples. So this became a place that mostly people from the entire neighborhood frequented. So we decided to take this up as a site of study. Just to quickly give you a sense of what the place is like. So this is a particular one of the parks, and the space and area around the parks. What we observed was that most elderly people visited these parks, and that's why it became an interesting place for us to start our study. So this was one of the places that from where our study and mapping emerged. And this is the other side, which is a little more in the central part of the neighborhood. Here, there are more shops, more medical clinics. There were also small banks and post offices. So this is the second site. Okay, so why journeys? Now, what do we understand by journeys? So what we felt was that when people are moving through the neighborhood, they respond to the built environment in many ways. Now, these movements through the neighborhood allow them to carry forward their experiences. Now, these series of lived experiences during one cycle of the movement we thought could be called a journey. Now, every person who makes these different kind of journeys, they create their own meanings. Okay, so these journeys are not necessarily constant movement, but it also involves pauses. It also involves interacting with people. So journeys have purposes. So for example, my journey has a purpose of going and buying grocery, but the meaning of the journey may be different from the purpose itself. So although I may have this intention of going and buying grocery, but I may eventually derive many other meanings from that one particular journey itself. By reading journeys, the study tries to understand how their meanings are constructed and explore the influence of the built environment in creating these meanings. Now, what we realized was that there was a need for a methodology because there was no one method to study this. And we are trained in architecture to kind of, go to a site and sort of, draw what we see and map, etc. But this somehow, because this involved a lot of other things, we felt that this somehow, our regular training did not allow us to study this kind of, this kind of activity on site. So what are the things that we needed? To understand the journey, we needed to understand the physical aspects of the journey, which is the path of the movements and the physical components of the built environment, the behavioral aspect of the journey. So what are the reactions, the interactions that the people are making with their built environment and the other people? Also the temporal aspect of the journey, which is understanding the kind of activities with respect to time. Okay, and time became extremely important because what we need to also understand is elderly people are relatively slower than most other people. So the movements are very timed. Also, it also requires you to understand the fact that the body becomes very important as you age. Because when I was 20 years old, I was not as conscious of movements I made while I am probably in my 30s now, because I feel like I'm more conscious of, where I'm going, how I'm moving, how I'm stepping, etc. So the consciousness of the body also was very important. So there was a need for having an eclectic approach. So the mapping method focused on spatio-behavioral mapping. So to map the physical and behavioral aspects. Then there was, we obviously we didn't have a whole group of people except the fact that we needed to look at elderly people. So we had to observe people who were 60 and above. So it was a random sampling that we did. And we started off with a discrete tracking of the subjects, after which, so that's where we kind of traced the path of their journey. And then it was followed by a brief interview with the subject to understand what was their background. While this was happening, we were also mapping rhythms. Now, the rhythms was to understand the relationship of time and the experiences of the surrounding. So during this, the duration of the activity, the tempo, the bodily directions, and other factors that affect the activity like sound, light, heat, and texture. So the map was effectively to track the movements of the people on a physical map. This process allowed us to collect the discourse of the journey. So this was through our observations. We were trying to create we were trying to create a discourse of the journey. The interview, effectively, which we did not do at the beginning, but we rather did it at the end of the journey, because we didn't want the subject to get apprehensive or conscious. So while we were also mapping them, we were doing it very discreetly, almost like a detective. But the interviews eventually then became this time where we could actually find out more about them. So it was about getting personal information, understanding what is their social and family background. These questions also address their daily activities, what were their likes and dislikes, trying to remember the path of their journey, and also their experiences. Now, this was effectively to get a discourse about the journey from the subject itself. This background was very important influence in an individual's daily journeys. Okay, so the different parameters that we kind of looked at for our mapping, just to quite quickly go over it: the actions, the interactions, the time, tempo, the light and the heat, sound and texture. Okay, so now we'll quickly just show you a few examples of what were the journeys and what did we understand through these journeys. So this is just typically one of the journeys. Now, what you see on the top is a map where we kind of map the path of the movement of the particular subject. This particular subject is a 63-year-old female who makes this journey almost every day in the evening for about an hour or 45 minutes. And travels a distance of about 1 kilometer. What you see at the bottom in the chart is effectively showing you the kind of built environments that she traverses through, which is the street. And in this particular journey, she was going to this Amul booth to buy milk or other kind of stuff. And what were the actions that were undertaken at the time when she was passing through these particular spaces? What were her interactions with persons or objects? What was her bodily direction? So, whether she was continuously having a sustained movement, or was she stopping often? Time taken to move. What was her tempo? What was the kind of light and heat at the time? Was she trying to move through only shaded spaces, or was she okay just walking through the sun? It didn't matter. What was the kind of sound at the time when she was in that area, and the kind of textures that she moved through? So these were kind of things that we had to very meticulously map as we were mapping the person. What we eventually understood in this case, the purpose of the journey.
Go ahead.
Would you like me to address these questions at the moment, or should we address it later?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just continue. So the purpose of the journey so after that, when we interviewed her, what we understood that the purpose of her journey was for shopping. Now I'll just quickly tell you, she seemed to be a subject who we realized through our discussion was a seeker of opportunities, because what was very interesting about her journey was that although she said that she wanted to go to shop every day, what was very interesting was that she always took a different path. Tried to kind of, there were like different paths that she could take to reach that destination. The possibilities of meeting somebody who she knew, or maybe on a good day or a good weather, she would hope to see a peacock, because you tend to see a lot of peacocks in Ahmedabad, or, also just to kind of generally break the monotony of her paths. She would take different paths almost every time. What we projected in the understanding of her through her interview was that her journey was a journey of excitement. I will quickly show you the next. Sorry. Yeah. Then there was the second journey, which was, we called it the journey of the smart wisdom, again made by an 82-year-old male who was very interesting, very, very active 82-year-old, going to this particular park every day for his exercise. Again, his purpose of the journey was, usually exercise, routine, socializing, etc. Also very timed, had a very, very specific routine, went at a specific time, did his exercise, met his people and friends for a specific time, and got back home. What is very interesting about his interview was that he said, that he has learned to move with the times. He says, I know how to use the internet. My children have taught me how to use the internet. And what was very interesting was to go to this particular park, he had to cross this ring road, which is the 132 feet ring road. It's a very, very busy street, very, very busy road. And his time of going to this particular park was peak hour, peak rush time. He would cross this ring road in 3 minutes flat. How would he do that? He would be very strategic. He would wait at the signal when the cars started to pile up one after the other for the signal because the traffic was slower. He would strategically time himself and make a dash for the opposite side. So in 3 minutes, he would reach the other side. He told me, I wouldn't recommend you to cross like that. So what's very interesting is that he has, in a very tactical manner, figured out how to make his daily journey. We call this journey a journey of smart wisdom. Now, similarly, there were many other journeys that we identified, and we kind of derived meanings from these journeys. The journey of fulfillment, the journey of deliberate wandering, journey of rituals, journey of curiosity, journey of health and well-being, journey of insights, journey of de-stress. Now, we have identified an overall through our study, because it was a limited time study, what we eventually realized that these are the kind of journeys that we have identified. We were about 9 of the journeys. What through our reading and through our understanding of various kind of discourses, and also the way we kind of address elderly in our built environments, what we realize is our journey is the journey that we cater for in our built environments is mainly the journey of de-stress, rituals, and health and well-being. But there are a whole lot of journeys, all the other 6 journeys that we don't really cater to, or we don't really think about these journeys. And maybe that's something that we need to start addressing. Another thing that I want to also make note was that these are just about 9 journeys that we have identified, but that does not limit to these 9 journeys, but many more journeys. What also we wanted to understand was that elderly make these journeys, and it's not restricted to that one particular person will only make one journey, but a person, depending on the kind of day that they're having or the kind of backgrounds that they have, they could make multiple sets of journeys. So these journeys can be innumerable. Understanding these journeys as micro-narratives can better inform the planning processes in the mega-narrative of the city, thereby providing agency to the aging population to lay claim on the urban space as active social actors. So the journeys and the built environment.
So now what do we do with all this data? Because, we do we've mapped journeys, we've kind of, ghosted all these subjects. And now what do we do? So what do we do when we get all this data? We overlay it. And then we start identifying these nodes and the kind of activities that happen there. Now, very interestingly, in this map, it comes across as this node is an entry to a park. Fair enough. And what is happening there? There is de-stress, there's health and well-being, there is deliberate wandering. Similarly, there are other nodes that come in, people are talking, sitting, eating, drinking, read, shop, transit, meet, and all these nodes which overlap, we identify. But the idea here is, what do we do with all this data, right? So go ahead. Now, if you see the node 1, this is an entrance to a park. Okay. Generally, when there is a park that's designed, okay, we design the park, the entrance is just one threshold, which is probably a 2 meter, 3 meter, or maximum 5 meter threshold that you enter, and then you have the road. Even to an extent where we renovate a footpath, okay, the argument between a building, a housing building, and the footpath, that small slope that you have to cross the plinth of the building, is like it's no man's land. But we never consider these junctions to be designed. Who designs this? Who has the agency? Will the corporation do it, or will the CSR of some company, the company corporate social responsibility of the company sponsoring the park, do it? Who will do it? So these are actually junctions that we need to design. The next example, this I think is in every city in our country, where you get that small opening in a divider, and that is where you make your dash for. Okay, and this is where most of just see the size of the opening. This is where most of the senior citizens are navigating this entire crossroad. Now, do you think these become very interesting points of insert? Like, this is where small insert, large impact. This is where you can get tactical. This is tactical urbanism all the way. You go there, you make sure this is taken care of before someone's got a problem, a knee problem or hip problem, and they cannot cross over. So this is the second side. Similar kind of studies, the notes came up. What are the kind of activities happening there? We all do this on an everyday. It's an Indian society, we love to collect at corners. I think everywhere, Southeast Asian countries, they just, because of the population, they love collecting at street corners, notes, talking, shopping, eating, everything happens, right? There are no designated spaces. So similarly, like, how do we address these things? I know they've got a sense of informality to it. Okay. Haath gaadi is a haath gaadi, it is informal. But what happens when there's a crowd collected around it? It kind of overflows on the street. Then the bikes and the cars kind of overflow into each other. And then the last thing you know, people are going wrong way. So that it's a domino effect. Bus stops. Now here you've got this very nice bench besides the bus stop, but how do we make sure that this entire urban insert or a small infrastructural insert is well designed? And this is where you understand, okay, what are the kind of activities happening there? So just to conclude the presentation here, obviously this is a never-ending presentation. We would love to, you know, get sponsored and go do more than 300 subjects and then probably make an entire study on it. Approach labs, Godrej Culture Lab is something that we've already written to help us. But yeah, the conclusions for the time being is multiple sustained activities and overlapping of the map journeys occur in transitional and liminal spaces, in between spaces. You know, between streets and parks, street and shop, street and temple, junction or two more streets. What we are considering is park, house, temple. What happens to in between? No man's land. Corporation karega, 2 hafta, 3 hafta, 5 hafta, kaam chalu hi hai. You know, footpath is under construction only. Once they come, they build the entire footpath. Then they will come, they will dig it up again for a gas line. Then they will concrete it again. Then they will come, dig it up again for some, you know, a 5G Ethernet cable. So that's how it's constantly happening. What happens to the everyday journeys? The transition spaces can be termed as by-the-way spaces. By-the-way spaces could be borrowed, private, semi-private, used by the elderly in the course of their daily journeys. There is a need for planned appropriation of these by-the-way spaces. We cannot, just because they are called by the way, it's not that they will happen by the way. You know, we would like to end this presentation by saying that conflict between designers' single meaning of the built environment versus the user's multiple meaning of the same can be resolved by the built environment not being over-designed. Even today, in terms of, you know, our architectural representations, you know, we've been in academics for over 15 years, like 12 years now, visiting, you know, practice into 15 years. We are having an overkill of representation, semicircular suns, birds, maximum rendering. The eye for detail is gone. Okay. But instead under designed so that they allow the users to communicate particular meanings to various individuals through the process of personalization. The more under designed, the more simple the places, the more appropriation of that design happens. This is Amos Rappaport, brilliant meanings in a built environment, amazing text. So non-designated spaces don't find a mention in the design brief. No one will give you entrance to a park or the liminal space between the road and a park of whatever, 35 square meters, usko design karo. It'll either be a park or it'll either be a road. 5-meter road and 5,000 square meter or like 500 square meter park. Either way, that's way, right? So design brief, guidelines, policies, the initiative of such an activity requires a strategic framework, creative practitioners in the field which participate, with participation of the elderly, obviously, because we need to stop putting them into silos and typecasting. We cannot assume elderly है मतलब घर पे बैठे रहेंगे balcony से outdoor world enjoy करेंगे. You know, that's not the idea. That's not the idea. Other residents and support groups, and this is already happening. See, this is already happening because there are initiatives like Streets for People. You know, there are initiatives like a lot of other things, but you know, we will come to it later. The potentials of a neighborhood-based approach, mega narratives, micro narratives feeding the mega narratives. There is a need for a pragmatic form of urban practice that moves beyond the familiar field. A problem-solving design response to more eclectic approach. Problem solving will only help you design a nice footpath, give the road size as per the requirement, and design the park. Okay, but we need to move out of it. It's about value adding. Today, there are at an average of 380-400 colleges of architecture in the country, and they pretty much are 90% full with their admissions. That means those are the number of architects coming out, right? So if we are only going to stick to problem solving, we are going to be mere colonized draftsmen. Okay, that's where the architecture education started, right, in our country. But we need to start adding value, you know, and the day we start adding value of a field, that is when we start entering the planning of bodies, we start entering the government bodies where value of a designer or an architect is what will be recognized towards making an intervention within the built environment. We would like to end our presentation with 2 photographs. One is Professor Ravi Hazara, who's been a mentor and a friend, and you know, we can't even call him Guruji, he's a friend. Then this is an image with his grandson. Like, who is the seesaw built for, right? Adapting the common arena for the slower bodies automatically makes navigation of an average person that of a super body. आप एक slowest pace के लिए एक environment design कीजिए, the average able-bodied will automatically move faster. Simple example, if the risers of a public building, of a civic structure, reduced by 5 mm or reduced by whatever, like, you know, a few mm, right? The average able body will run over it and the senior citizen will be able to walk over it comfortably. So these are things which make the average person super body and the slower body feel normal. Next, this is again, all that we speak right now is not to empathize or sympathize with all the senior citizens, no sympathy, no empathy here. Yeah, let's empathize, no sympathy. It's an investment for our future. Okay, we are going to be there 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now. This is an image of Professor Y.D. Pitkar, who actually recommended us to Abani Das, and thank you for the opportunity. And yes, at 62, this man is doing a skydive, and that is exactly breaking stereotypes. Thank you for the presentation. This is where we end, and yeah, I hope you guys had a good time. Yes.
Thank you, Architect Neha, Panchal, and Architect Yagnik, Bathija, for the wonderful and informative presentation. It is very much interesting also, and I think I hope this will definitely help our attendants to understand that topic much better and clearer. So now we will proceed to the next session, the question answer round. So our attendees have some question in the chat box.
How built environment can be designed for safety and security for the elderly citizens? Also, what will be the indicators and parameters to evaluate a place as elderly friendly? So yeah, this is a very interesting question. Now this after we do a sample of more than 100 in a neighborhood, okay, we need to really get into the anthropometry, something that we do in the first year. Okay, we do ergonomics and anthropometry, and we do all these bodily extensions and these exercises. That is something that we need to repeat with this age group or with this user group. I would not use the word age group, because elderly is like someone can be 50 and be a senior citizen mentally, and someone can be 75. But yes, once you start doing that, then you start understanding as per standards. Okay? Standards may all these aspects are given, but what we've observed are certain observations that, a simple example that I can give for parameters, IIM housing. Okay, it's a beautiful campus inside, and there is a story that goes that there was a senior citizen taking the regular morning walk. Okay, and that gentleman happened to get a stroke, and before he could reach the closest house for help, he kind of collapsed and he passed away. What happens when there are larger distances? What happens if you put a small bench in between? What happens where you see where there are elderly coming to shop for certain things? If there is a small platform kept in between for them to rest their bags. We have it in toilets, in airports, in all these fancy buildings, fancy infrastructural projects, where you got a space for changing diapers, you got a space for keeping bags. Why not do that in the built environment? So yes, that starts happening. Safety, security. Second, I think it always goes back to Jane Jacobs' eyes on the street. Okay, activities of the ground. Okay, that we engage with on a daily basis. If that become more permeable, safety and security increases. Most of the elderly, I think, facing any kind of stigma or whatever when there is not enough infrastructure development or inside homes. Dissolve compound walls of a certain neighborhood, see the change in activity. It is only by experimentation that we will understand how do you calibrate the indicators and parameters. I hope that answers the question. Then Namrata has asked, how does tactical pop-up urbanism help in safety of elderly in public areas? Considering Indian context, few examples, please. So this is similarly what I just answered the previous question also. It's on the same lines. But yeah, for example, when we were talking to Dr. Seema Khanwalkar from SEP on this entire aspect of the IIM housing, I again come back to that same example. After that, what the residents of the IIM housing, all the faculties of the IIM campus which were residing there, they started putting a chair outside, a bench and a telephone line. And it was strategically placed at an average of 18 to 25 meters. Because that is what they tied up with certain medical fraternities to understand that what is a comfortable distance to walk. Then the height of the footpath. Just by giving the edge a slope, it doesn't work. Probably the footpath edges on a longer stretch need to slightly have a slope towards the street. Proper colored markers. So these are kind of, tactical pop-ups in the city that can help, in public areas. Shade, the most example of shade, because the idea of dehydration, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, India, the heat is going over the top. The idea of dehydration. So this helps, these kind of tactical inserts will be very helpful. For all you know, they can be mobile. They can be mobile. Our friends, Chal Agency, Unit Light Infrastructure, these 2 pages on Instagram, you can go follow them. They are doing some very interesting, inserts where this is how you decide. Okay? They can be mobile. They can just come in when there's an activity that's happening. Then what aspects of technology in the built environment are included in the age-friendly city? Constant monitoring, making sure they can connect to an emergency in time.
I think just emergency phones.
Emergency phones, yes. Then, I think this, it's a very interesting aspect because technology, everyone has it. The speed at which India adapted to online payment systems is an example that, we are not very far away. But still, we do it only where it's needed because we still not understood the size of a divider or the height of a speed breaker or the footpath. So in terms of technology, basic information systems, okay, on every street, I think should let's start from there. Okay, let's start from there and then probably we can move ahead. And all these, by the way, all these are already considered in planning senior citizen facilities and, old age homes where, you've got a phone in the bathroom, you've got an emergency button. What happens if all this comes on the street? That's all.
Actually, now even elderly are getting more
savvy.
Tech savvy.
The 82-year-old man tells us, I know how to use the internet. My children have taught me. All of us know it today. All of us know it. Yes. So what are the checklists for essential features of age-friendly cities that can be used for self-assessment of a city or community? At a city level, we are still trying to grapple. We are still at a community level. So at a community level, we can say.
But there are a lot of checklists that are also available. The WHO has the global age-friendly cities guidelines where they kind of give you a series of checklists that we need to kind of adhere to make a city, age-friendly. Also in India, we have the Ministry of Urban Development who has guidelines which they have for differently abled and elderly, and
it's called the harmonized guidelines and space standards.
So what we feel effectively and honestly, that's one of the things that came up in our research was that all of these are very spatial parameters that we have to look at for the elderly, and whether we like it or not, our cities are not really addressing them, although they are just checklists. So वो ऐसे आके वो एक tick मार के जाते हैं, लेकिन उसके ऊपर ज़्यादा अमल नहीं होता है. And frankly, the cities are still just because there are way too many agencies also involved in the designing of the built environment. So the agencies don't really talk to each other, and then often it leads to a very haphazard kind of development. So this is where I feel like the importance of having residents associations in the neighborhood, having them to be very active is very important, because probably when residents and local people who are in control of that place can also start to kind of monitor or look over, then only I think there's a more collaborative and participatory development that can happen. So then we can go beyond just the basic guidelines.
And I think that pretty much came across in this entire pandemic, where the government eventually realized that there are a lot of senior citizens who are alone inside the home and they do not have access, or they are not capable of reaching a medical facility in time. So let's call them, let's check on them. So if that's happening because of a pandemic, I think we should just ride on the pandemic's back and make it an everyday practice. Even if every lane, if every neighborhood has a count of the number of senior citizens there, how a school keeps a count of the number of children and the kind of parents coming, dropping them and going. What if, see, at the end of it, a senior citizen and a child is pretty similar, right? So we need to just make sure that we are aware. Second, I think in a very, very philosophical way, what I would say is the abled body needs to slow down. And this is just an observation that I have had. This is very personal. That whenever I see a senior citizen trying to carry a bag or cross a road, I will catch the bag for them and I'll move faster. And then the next thing you know, I have crossed the road and the gentleman or the lady standing behind, and she's like, wait, let me. We need to slow down. We need to slow down so that they don't feel left out. That's the idea. And similarly, the cities also. So what kind of constraints do architects face in creating an interactive public space for people of all ages in the post-pandemic period? Checklist. I think the ideal constraint here is that we follow checklist. See, guidelines are important, okay? But guidelines are followed by whom? They are guidelines for whom? Like the last time when there was a drainage pipe extension outside your house or a footpath that was being redone outside your house, how many of the society people were involved in it? You know, how many of the residents were asked, would you like to have a seating here? What are the problems? Do you face a problem of dog poop? Is that all? You know, so these are kind of constraints that we are facing on a daily basis. Second, I think though the popularity of architecture as a profession is growing, okay, in a post-pandemic period, still the decision makers are probably not coming from an education background which includes humanities and sociology, an understanding of humanities and sociology. So the day all of them come together, I think constraints will reduce because you know, we always talk about, right, we are no more the modernist where the architect is the chief of everything. I think practice today, the Vastu consultant is the chief of everything. But still, jokes apart. But yeah, those are the constraints we face on a daily basis. How many of the competitions to streets for people get realized? So many every year. Nasik, Ahmedabad, I'm sure Guwahati, so many competitions for streets for people, right? How many of them get realized? The cash prize is given and it's gone. So then that is the biggest constraint, right? So,
there are organizations like the WRI who are very actively, working in Mumbai and trying to sort of work on the politics of streets and, making streets for people. So they are working very hard in trying to kind of make streets walkable, and they're kind of looking at it across the country, and they are coordinating with the corporations of the various cities. Or even institutes, and in collaboration with them, they're trying to make small efforts. So maybe, if you can look up some of their work, it would be very interesting, because what I frankly just want to say that we don't have answers, frankly, for all the questions. And like, if you just look at guidelines, it is a given. Your cities have to be elderly friendly, but they are not. And what our study effectively started off was on the note that if the cities are not elderly friendly, but elderly people are still navigating the city and negotiating their ways through, how are they doing it? And so if we can learn from this process, and hopefully that could inform our decisions or our actions, I think it would make a big difference in our practice. So I think on that note, we'd like to end. Thank you, Dr. Devi, for telling us about school.
Thank you so much for clearing the doubts of our attendees, and I hope the attendees got their answers. So now I would like to request architect Rahul Roy to deliver vote of thanks.
I would like to extend my gratitude to our honorable speaker, Architect Neha Panchal ma'am and Architect Yagnik Bathija sir. Thank you both of you for making time for us and to grace this event with your insight and knowledge. I am sure today all of us had benefited from this event, and it was really a great learning opportunity. We would like to have many more such sessions with you in future. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Rahul.
Well done. I would also like to thank our managing trustee, sir, Architect Avani Das, sir, Daksha ma'am, and CEO Sahil Das, sir. I also thank our dear principal, Architect Digambar Das, sir, Dr. Nirmala Devi ma'am, Architect Parangam Basista Sharma, sir, for coordinating this event, Architect Himashri Bhagwati ma'am, the host of this beautiful event. And at last, I would also like to thank our esteemed participants, Architect Biswadatta sir, Dr. Jivan Fukan sir, and my beloved students to make this event a successful one. Thank you so much.